And we're still at Christians Against Poverty office here in Bradford. If you're looking at a map and you're not in the UK, Bradford, if you can find Birmingham or Manchester, go up a bit the map, you'll find Bradford, not far from Leeds. So that's where we are today with some lovely people. We've had Keith, we've had Katie, we've had Anna, we've had Claire, and we've got many more guests for you before 5 o'clock. So stick around for more awesome interviews. So at the moment I have another guest in front of me. Hello to you.
Hello.
Now, just start with a simple part. So what's your name and what is it you do here at CAP?
Okay, so my name's Helen Webb. I've been here 17 years. I should actually say that because I feel like I'm almost part of the furniture. What I do here at the moment is lead our external relations team. So I'm a relationship manager. So essentially I'm making friends with all sorts of organisations external to CAP. So they can be creditors, they could be big referral organisations, or just anyone that we want to be making friends with or building a relationship with. Just, and that's really to bring benefit to CAP, to our clients, to everyone we're involved with.
There's a bit of that which I actually understand. It's going to come out all day, isn't it? But we had a debt management plan, 2009-10 it started, and one of the things that was really hard was you have a creditor who wants information from you. We're on a debt management plan which is basically not approved directly by the court but indirectly by the court, so this is effectively a legal thing, and you've got a creditor that's chasing you saying we want this much money, and I'm sitting there thinking but I can't give you any more because this has all been worked out by people far cleverer than you and I. But they would say, okay, we know that company, we know that finance house, so we have a relationship with them. They would then talk to them, and it took such an inordinate amount of stress off us trying to process life, kids, finding work, all the rest of it, for someone to say, yeah, I'll take that burden off you.
Absolutely, and that's what we're all about here. So often our debt coach will go into a client's home, and at that point really they are there almost in chaos sometimes because there's so much going on. They're trying to juggle everything at that point. They could be feeling like lonely and isolated, and we can talk more about that in a bit, but essentially they're really, really stressed out because of the pressure they're feeling from the creditors. Everybody's asking them for money, and so at that point it's like, help, what do I do? And that's the joy of a debt centre manager going into their home, and they're bringing that kind of a bit more calm and a bit more order to the debt. So what we'll do is here at the support hub here in Bradford, this is where all our debt counsellors are, and they will do like all the debt counselling and negotiation. But one of the first things we'll do with the clients is to give them a little, it's like a little business card type sized card, and to say to them, if anyone comes to your door or anyone's chasing you for debts, just give them this phone number, and that is essentially the phone number for the team here that deal with lots of our creditors. I think the joy as well of CAP is that we'll negotiate over what we call priority debts, and let's explain what those are. Those are kind of the bills you need to pay to keep you in your home, so things like your gas. Yeah, exactly, council tax, gas, electric, water, and there's a few other things that come under that kind of priority banner, but we will be able to negotiate with those creditors for you, and then also with the other creditors that you might owe money to, like your credit cards and your loans, and we call those non-priority debts, because obviously there are different things that happen depending on what type of debt it is. You could get your gas and electric off, but for us here it's absolutely fundamental that we want to build a relationship. So we will build a relationship with those creditor organisations. We want to speak to them. We want to have a dialogue with them. We want to really, really help our clients and sort out sort of all sorts of situations. And it's a real privilege to do that. So I go out and I talk to energy companies and banks and building societies and all sorts of other organisations. But if you think about it, it's almost like a kind of the circle of life is how I describe it, because a lot of those organisations will be actually signposting clients into our service. So actually it's kind of, we're helping their clients. So they're really keen to refer. Perhaps, here at CAP we'll work with sort of more vulnerable clients. So they'll want to refer customers and clients into us because they know that we're going to, journey with them, walk alongside them, put together a great financial statement for them where they can repay their debts. That's great. Like you mentioned, debt management plans. That's great. They can go on a debt management plan, and if they can't, then we'll look at other options for them to get them debt free, which may involve kind of insolvency type things. But that's a massive help to a creditor because they don't have to worry about those customers anymore. They know that CAP are dealing with them. great for the customer because they're not worried because they know you can give the little card to their creditor, but also, they know that CAP are talking to them as well. So it's kind of a big kind of win-win situation all round for everyone.
I guess one of the things about debt, I mean, we can talk about the health and the stress and all that, but one of the things I think where debt becomes something we don't understand perhaps is it's very impersonal because it's about a debt. But that debt has been accrued by a human being, and the person that wants the money, well, they're also a human being as well. And it's very easily to, because I've been through this stuff, it's very easy to forget that you're dealing with people who are dealing with people, and we're all human beings trying to get on in life. And actually, the bit that you do is a bit that, I mean, we didn't use CAP because we had some business debt, which is more complicated, but the same basic principle of the company that we used, paid for by the FSA, so they were neutral, which is great. But being able to say, this creditor is not listening. So we had one. I'm not going to clearly mention who they are. It wasn't a big debt. We had some big debts, and they were great. The energy companies and the telecom people and the banks, they were actually quite sensible because this is their bread and butter. One of our creditors, almost our smallest one, could not understand that we can't just pay their debt. Well, just pay us and we'll go away. Yeah, but we have to pay a percentage and it's all worked out fairly. And in the end, I had someone from our debt management people who wrote an email that we just had to sign and send to say, basically, this is court approved. If you take this to court, you will lose because this is court approved. And they just could not get that because they just wanted their money, even though it was actually quite a small amount of money. But to them, it was their world. But of course, it was our world, and we wanted to pay them. And it was such a hard situation. But I could come to someone like you. Yeah, it's like a different company, but they helped me through because I just wanted to shout and scream and ignore them, but they helped me to write an email to basically say go away, but in a really appropriate way.
Yes, and that's the joy of having an independent organisation like Creditors Against Poverty that you work with, who are authorised and regulated by the FCA, and we provide you kind of like that independent person in the middle between the client and between the creditor. I mean, there are things that you mentioned there that are tricky, and that some of the smaller creditors, it's really hard for them because they don't have so much cash flow and they're small, so they are sometimes there are issues around obviously them wanting money, but we are here to be impartial. We're here to treat people fairly and follow the rules and the regulations. I think the joy of building a relationship with a creditor really comes into play. I think what we do here is if there are issues with particular creditors or organisations, or let's just say things that just don't sound right. So that could be, I don't think I'm being treated fairly by this organisation, or it cannot be right that I've got to wait 5 weeks for my universal credit, or whatever it is. So what we have here is what we call an evidence bank. So somebody involved in a case, be it a frontline debt coach or one of our debt advisors here, can have a look at that case and go, we don't think that's quite fair, that's not quite right, let's pop it on the evidence bank. And so for us, that's a really valuable tool, because what we've got is a record of, say you've got an enforcement agent that may be doing things that we don't think they should do. All of that's like recorded in one space. And so as relationship managers then, when we're speaking to organisations, it could be any type of organisation, like from the energy sector through to the enforcement, but it means we can chat to them about where things might be going wrong, or could we work on this? Is there any way you could process this piece of paper faster so that doesn't happen again? We really, really value that piece of, it's like evidence, exactly what it says on the tin, when we have those discussions. But ultimately, see, everybody wants to do things right. So it's not like anybody's doing that kind of stuff on purpose. The creditor wants to do it right, we want them to do it right, the client wants them to do it right. But it's just about you all working together as a team and making sure you're communicating really well, you pick up on things fairly quickly, you get them addressed, you have really helpful conversations, and then it just helps the whole relationship across the board.
And of course, a bit that I've just suddenly realised as you're talking, we're talking about the client comes along, I've got debt, you've got the creditor who you've now connected that client's debt with that creditor. But actually, as a Christian organisation, you're able to work with these people who actually want the money, and actually I don't know why this hasn't occurred to me, but you're showing them Jesus too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, we are. Perhaps not in such an overt way that you would imagine. So we're not potentially preaching to our creditors, but we are gently showing them, like, the conduct of God's people, that love, and the way that we work with clients. And I think fundamentally, that's what the service is all about, you see, because I could take us back to a client maybe that hasn't perhaps heard of CAP, who's isolated and alone in their home. Their door's shut because they're terrified of that creditor sending somebody out to see them. They've got their curtains shut. They may have no food. They may have no gas and electric. They probably won't have any money on their mobile phone. So they're almost kind of cut off. But you see, if they hear about CAP through either somebody in the community or even like the creditor saying to them, and so sometimes enforcement agents, believe me, they will go to people's doors and they will signpost them to debt help, and that can completely transform that person's life. But also then it does actually get the engagement happening again with the creditors, which is what they want. I mean, obviously we're going to put a budget together and tell them whether that client can afford to pay them X, Y, or Z, but it just opens up the communication. So we get somebody rescued from isolation because the local church have gone in, loved them to bits with Jesus love. Now, can you imagine what that says to a creditor? They are looking at this client who they couldn't get hold of, just, who were locked away. They thought, well, we'll never see the money again, or we'll never be able to talk to them. And then somebody from CAP will go knock on their door, sit down with them, take them food, put some money on the prepayment meters potentially, or whatever needs to happen, and really, really just journey with them. And that is absolutely God's love being poured out into that, person's life. CAP is massively respected in what we call the industry because we've got the time. The church are amazing. Nobody else could offer this service really because it would cost them far too much money. What the church are doing are taking Jesus into people's homes, journeying alongside people, and taking them away from that isolation and loneliness and bringing them into community and, really cosseting them is one of my favourite words, but just bring them into a space, where they're safe. They feel rescued. And that just speaks volumes. So we have like referral arrangements with referrers. We've got a partnership with DWP, so that means for where we've got debt centres, if somebody's in debt and they go into the local job centre plus, potentially they can get referred to CAP for help, which is fantastic. Otherwise, they may have found somebody else there to help them with the debts, but the fact is, people are looking at CAP service and going, for our vulnerable customers, and I want to say CAP is open to anyone, regardless, you don't have to be vulnerable, but we will help absolutely everyone, but our service is really helpful. If you need somebody to come and sit down with you and you can't manage a phone-based service, which are fantastic, by the way, if you can manage them, CAP is the service for you. If you want that supportive, holistic service, somebody to really walk that journey with you, that is what Christians Against Poverty offer. And as I said, totally in partnership with a local church.
Which is, I've heard a few of the folk, your colleagues here, talking about the hand. We are the hands and feet. But so much of what CAP is doing is working with the hands and feet of the local church.
Yeah.
You're sitting here in an office in Bradford. You can't help people in Kent. It's a very far away.
Yeah.
But the local church in Kent can help.
Yeah.
And if you can support the local church with the equipping and resourcing they need, I can understand very easily how that would be such a transformative thing. Absolutely. For that little region, I don't know why Kent, but that place in Kent. You're supporting them from here. And equipping them with what they need, because they don't need to have all the training of what you're doing here specifically, or some of the I've met some of the people who have got real knowledge on debt and law. Well, they don't need all that, but you can support them with the bit that they can do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really what CAP is all about. It's about freeing up the church to do what they do so incredibly well, which is, there's loads of kind of people volunteering at any Christians Against Poverty debt centre. There are people that are volunteering as befrienders to go in on client visits when we're talking to clients, about their debt. And then there's people praying, and then there's people backing them up and doing food shops and doing all sorts of incredible things so that so that debt centre and the managers there are freed up to really meet the needs of the people. I mean, obviously they've got a role to do in collecting, paperwork and evidence and asking clients questions, but they're so highly trained in that, they know how to do it really well to get the information they need in the loveliest way is how I would describe it. Well, and then all of that comes back to the Bradford Support Hub, where we do the debt counselling. So they don't have to worry about, is that right? Is that rule right? Have I done that properly? Is that process written? All that, don't worry about it. I can go into that client's home, I can walk in and go, you haven't got any food. You just haven't got any money on your prepayment meters. Come on, let's sort you out. It's very much about crisis management in the initial stages and really concentrate on the human needs of that. What are your human and spiritual needs, to be honest with you? What are the needs you have right now? Because we can't talk to you about your debt. If you're freezing cold and you're starving, that's not going to work. We really want to come in with practical help and support. So really that is very much what CAP do. Take all that pressure off of the front. I mean, obviously they've got loads of pressure. Lots of the clients we work with have got very, lots of vulnerabilities, very kind of complex situations they're dealing with. There's a lot going on. And so the front line, I just want, if there's any of them listening, they're utterly amazing. What they do is incredible. We could not do what we do. Obviously, we're all in it together. Yeah, it's really important.
Let me finish. I'll ask you the question that I made up this morning. I've asked everybody so far. There's lots of jobs you could be doing, lots of places you could spend your days. What makes you want to come into CAP every day that you're working here?
Oh my days, I absolutely want to come in here every day. I came here, I actually felt quite called by God 17 years ago to come to Christians Against Poverty. I just love being a part of this place. I am passionate about seeing people released from debt and poverty, injustice, and it's just an absolute privilege to come here. I love passionately what we do as an organisation, so for me, I can go out and talk to all sorts of people about what CAP do. I'm thankful to be paid to do that, but I'm absolutely driven by just wanting to see God's kingdom come on earth, and see people's lives transformed. That is absolutely what we're all about.
Thank you for sharing some of that. I'm loving the people I'm meeting. It's my privilege to be here today and just get to meet people and see what they're doing, because you can hear about something, but I've walked around the different floors, I've met different teams, and the joy that comes across of people being here is just phenomenal. So thank you.
The June issue of Pure Media, the magazine, comes out on Friday the 7th of June, with a whole host of international writers speaking on life, faith, sports, technology, joy and more, from our family to yours. In the June edition, we shine the spotlight on Sherry Seligson, a marine biologist from Florida, and Chris Kerr, who helps us focus and celebrate on dads. Sign up today and enjoy all of this and more at www.puremediathemagazine.com.